In Brightmoor, Detroit, Tess arrives at the house she booked online. The instructions say she'll find the keys inside the lockbox, but when she opens it she finds it empty. She immediately calls the booking agent for help, only to be sent to voicemail. After leaving a message and ignoring several calls from her ex, she notices that the lights inside the house are on. Tess rings the bell and to her shock, Keith opens the door. He explains that he's currently renting the house, and they realize that the agent accidentally double-booked the place. Since it's raining pretty heavily, Keith tells Tess to come in. Then Keith shows Tess his booking confirmation to prove he's telling the truth. Tess calls the nearest hotel to try to get a room, but unfortunately it's already fully booked tonight. Keith overhears this and points out there's a medical convention in town, so he doesn't think there'll be rooms anywhere. He convinces her to share the house for the night and even lets her have the bed because he can sleep on the couch. In the bedroom, Tess finds Keith's wallet, so she takes a picture of his ID before giving it to him. After taking a shower, she returns to the living room and discovers Keith waiting for her with wine. Tess turns down the drink but agrees to chat for a while. She shares that she's in town for a job interview with a documentary filmmaker named Catherine, and Keith reveals that Catherine's next film will be about a Detroit music collective, which he's one of the founders of. Having something in common helps them get along and the conversation lasts hours while Tess ends up drinking anyway. In the middle of the night, Tess is awakened by the door creaking. Suddenly she hears a screech and discovers that the bedroom door is open. Keith is having a nightmare on the couch, so he's the one making weird noises. Tess comes closer and shakes his arm, calling his name. At first nothing happens, however when she tries again, he's startled awake and she screams in shock. Tess asks him if he opened her door, but he swears he didn't. Then Tess goes back to the bedroom and makes sure to lock the door before going to bed. The next morning Tess wakes up to find a note from Keith saying he had to go out, but he wishes her good luck. On her way out, she leaves the key in the lockbox. Now that there's sunlight, Tess is surprised to notice that every house in the neighborhood is in ruins except for the one she rented. In the city, she meets with Catherine in a cafe for the interview. When Tess tells her where she's staying, Catherine thinks it's crazy and warns her that it isn't a good neighborhood. Moments later Tess returns to the house and sees a homeless man named Andre trying to get her attention. As he starts running toward her, she rushes to the lockbox to get the key and manages to get inside right before the guy catches up to her. He pounds on the door and tells her to come out, ignoring her when she asks him to leave. While keeping an eye on the window, Tess tries to call the police but they tell her they don't have available units now. Afterward Tess goes to the bathroom only to notice there's no toilet paper. She searches every room in the house but she can't find it anywhere, so she decides to check the basement. Tess finally finds the paper there and quickly grabs a roll. However, when she tries to leave she discovers that the door has closed and locked itself. She can't open it no matter how hard she shakes it, and she can't call for help because she left her phone upstairs. Tess has the main key, so when Keith returns he won't be able to come in. There's also a window that she can't open. While looking around for something she can use to open the door, Tess discovers a rope coming out of a hole in the wall. When she pulls it, a secret door opens. It's very dark inside, so she decides to ignore it. Hours later, Tess gets tired of waiting, so she grabs a mirror and reflects the basement light into the mysterious room. Now she can see a short corridor, so she crosses it and finds another door. She opens it and turns on the light, which reveals an old mattress, a bucket, a camera, and a bloody handprint on the wall. Tess is so horrified that she rushes back to the basement. Suddenly someone pounds on the main door, so Tess looks out the window to confirm that Keith has finally returned. She pounds on the window until he hears her and he manages to open it from the outside, so she can pass him the key. Seconds later they're both in the house and Tess tells him about the mysterious room. Keith doesn't think it's weird because basements are supposed to have junk, but Tess wants to leave. He quickly stops her and convinces her to wait a few minutes, since he wants to go to the basement to take a look and he may need her help if he gets stuck too. After a few seconds in the basement Keith stops responding, so Tess goes downstairs to investigate. The door is about to close again, but this time Tess manages to stop it. She rushes upstairs and drops the keys on the table before grabbing a chair that now keeps the door open. Then she goes to the mysterious room, however Keith isn't there. Tess looks around the corridor and thanks to the phone's light, this time she sees a new door. When she opens it, she finds a very creepy tunnel. At that moment Tess hears Keith asking for help, so she gathers her courage and descends into the tunnel. After crossing a gate, she finds some empty cages with bowls in them. As she starts crying, she keeps searching the tunnel until she's startled by something, but it's just Keith. He's also terrified and says someone bit him. They agree they need to leave but they can't agree on which way is the exit, so an argument ensues. Suddenly a naked monstrous lady appears in the corridor and grabs Keith to start bashing his head on the wall until he's dead. Then this monster roars at Tess. Meanwhile, successful actor AJ is driving near the beach when he receives a call from his producers. They inform him that his co-star has accused him of abuse, so he's now fired. As AJ denies it and freaks out, the producers inform him that the media already has the story. AJ hangs up and stops the car to stare at the ocean in shock. Sometime later AJ goes to see his accountant, who points out he won't be able to afford a lawyer and keep this fancy lifestyle. Since the industry won't give him any new opportunities, AJ has to start considering selling some assets, and his accountant even tells him that he quits. Afterward, AJ flies to Detroit and notices that the incident is already on the news, so he has to lie low. In the evening, he arrives at Brightmoor, revealing he's the owner of the mysterious house and wants to sell it. After seeing Tess' car parked outside, he enters the house and finds the chair blocking the door, so he moves it and closes the basement. Then he notices Keith's and Tess' things in various rooms, yet there's nobody around. He calls his house agent, who tells him there haven't been any bookings in weeks. AJ thinks there may have been squatters in the house, but that's not the agent's problem, so she hangs up. Later, AJ goes to a bar with a friend and admits he did take advantage of his co-star, but he doesn't see it as a big deal. In fact, he insults her for wanting to ruin his career. When AJ returns to the house, he leaves a message on his co-star's voicemail to apologize even though his lawyer told him not to speak to her. The next morning, AJ wakes up with a terrible hangover that makes him throw up. He then searches all the abandoned bags and suitcases until he finds Tess' laptop. Her name appears on the screen, but AJ can't access the computer without a password. After finding the keys on the table, AJ looks at the basement, where the light isn't working anymore. Nobody answers when he calls, however he hears a noise that startles him. Concluding that the squatters are down there, AJ gets dressed and grabs a knife and a flashlight before descending into the basement. As he looks around, he hears another noise and finds the rope, so he pulls it and discovers the hidden door. Soon he finds the creepy room, but this only makes him excited. AJ returns to the living room and searches online for information to know if underground spaces increase a house's value. He learns that he can list the basement separately, so he grabs a measuring tape and rushes downstairs to measure the secret areas. He even moves the bed to do this, not disturbed by the implications of the room at all. Eventually, AJ finds the other door and gets more excited when he sees the tunnel. He continues to take measurements and doesn't stop until he hears some music. There's a light at the end of the tunnel, so he follows it to find one more room. It smells terrible, the floor is covered with old blankets, and a small TV is playing a video of a mother feeding a baby. Suddenly the measuring tape starts getting pulled, so AJ lets go of it and watches it disappear in the tunnel. When he hears a strange noise, he immediately starts running. He accidentally trips and drops the flashlight, which starts malfunctioning. The light is still enough for AJ to see the monster coming, and she gets close enough to growl in his face. AJ runs again only to end up falling into a hole and hurting his arm. After the creature covers the hole with a lid, AJ is startled by Tess, who covers his mouth and tells him to be quiet. A flashback to 1982 shows how nice the neighborhood used to be. The house was originally owned by Frank, who one day went to the grocery store to buy supplies for a home birth. Once he had everything he needed, he put it in the trunk and got ready to go home, but at that moment he noticed a beautiful woman. He decided to follow her instead and parked outside her house. It was clear it wasn't Frank's first time doing this because he had a disguise ready in his trunk. He pretended to be an electrician and knocked on the woman's house, saying he was checking every house in the neighborhood because there had been some outages. The woman let him in and Frank sneaked into the bathroom, where he unlocked the window. On his way home, Frank was approached by his neighbor, who told him he was selling his house because the neighborhood was going to hell. After announcing that he'd never move, Frank took all the supplies to the basement, where a woman's screams could be heard. In the present, Tess tells AJ to stay calm to avoid upsetting the creature. At that moment the monster appears and offers them a baby bottle. Tess drinks from it without hesitation and asks AJ to do the same because the creature wants them to be her baby. However, AJ refuses, so the monster descends into the hole too. She gently pets Tess' head and calls her baby, but she growls at AJ as she grabs his neck. Suddenly the creature drags AJ out of the hole and takes him to the TV room, where she forces him to drink her milk while following the video on the screen. Since the creature left the lid open, Tess grabs AJ's flashlight and jumps until she manages to get out of the hole. As she advances through the tunnel, she accidentally steps on the tape and the noise alerts the monster. Tess runs as fast as possible and returns to the basement, but unfortunately the door is locked and kicking won't open it. Then she decides to break the window and crawl out of the building, which is taking her too long. Luckily Andre shows up to help her get out right before the creature could grab her. Andre tells Tess that he knows about the monster and that she should leave without AJ, warning her that there's something even worse in the house. Tess insists she has to help AJ, but Andre explains that the creature can come out at night and will attack Tess if she sees her. In the basement, AJ leaves the TV room and searches the tunnels with the light from his phone. Eventually he finds a bell connected to a power line, so he follows it until he finds another door. The creature soon comes after him, but she quickly leaves when she sees him standing by that particular door. Then AJ enters this new room, which is full of trash but also clothes, furniture, and another TV. On a bed, AJ is startled to find an elderly Frank, who makes some gestures to ask for water. AJ hands him the bottle but can't understand the next gesture, so he just brings the night table closer to the bed. Then AJ keeps looking around and finds a bunch of old VHS tapes. He watches them and discovers they're recordings of all the women Frank abused in that basement. A horrified AJ starts yelling at Frank, who pulls out a gun from the night table and self-deletes. Meanwhile Tess leaves town and goes to the nearest gas station, where he borrows a phone to call 911. When the police arrive, she takes them to the house and tells them what happened. However, the cops don't believe her and refuse to break into a locked house without a warrant, so they leave. A desperate Tess breaks a living room window to get back in the house and grab her keys. When she gets in her car, the monster comes out of the building growling, so Tess speeds up and repeatedly rams her into the wall until the creature passes out. As Tess heads back inside, AJ grabs the gun and leaves the room. He's startled by something in the tunnel and opens fire, only to discover he shot Tess in the hip. AJ immediately carries her out of the house and they notice that the creature is gone. Since AJ lost his keys in the tunnels, the duo runs away until they find Andre, who brings them to his hideout and shares the story. Frank was a serial abuser who never left the neighborhood and took all his victims to the basement to impregnate them. Then he started to impregnate the babies too, creating a copy of a copy of a copy. The creature is the result of all this inbreeding. She was born in the basement and has been living there for 40 years. AJ is desperate to help Tess because he wants to prove he isn't a bad guy and wishes to fix things with every person he's hurt. However, Andre wants them to stay hidden until sunrise, saying they're safe there because the monster has never entered his hideout. Suddenly the creature bursts into the room and captures Andre. She rips his arm off and proceeds to beat him to death with it. Tess and AJ immediately run away, but they can't jump over the fence because of the barbed wire. They climb the stairs of a water tower and when they reach the top, AJ pulls out the gun. However, he accidentally drops it, so he decides that Tess will be his distraction while he escapes. When the creature reaches the top too, AJ grabs Tess by the hair and throws her off the tower, telling the monster to get her baby. The creature immediately jumps too and she's the last thing Tess sees. After a few seconds, AJ looks down and sees the bodies on the ground. He comes downstairs and finally finds the hole in the fence, so he can get out. He picks up his gun and takes a closer look at the bodies, only to discover that Tess is alive. It turns out the creature acted as a shield and cushioned her landing. AJ apologizes to Tess for his betrayal, saying he panicked. When he helps Tess move, the creature wakes up and captures him, pressing her thumbs into his eyes before splitting his head in two. Afterward, the monster makes some sad noises because she sees Tess' wound but can't help her. Tess picks up the gun and points it at the creature, who responds by calling her baby and touching her forehead. Tess still shoots her in the head to kill her and finally gets to leave.